Hello, everyone. Welcome along to the Blood Red channel. We are live with the debrief after Liverpool are held 2-2 by Brighton at the Amex Stadium in the Premier League. Pretty disappointing result for the Reds, but yeah, some inconsistent performances throughout. But going through that one now, with me is Liverpool.com editor Matt Addison. Matt, quite a lot to go through within that one, but let's just get your overall reaction to Liverpool drawing 2-2 at Brighton.
Yeah, look, it was better than last year, wasn't it? But it wasn't particularly brilliant for Liverpool. It was a difficult performance, really. I'm not quite sure how they were ahead at half-time. They didn't really play particularly well. I thought Brighton had them where they wanted them. They almost gave them a little bit too much respect. I think we saw when Liverpool did press Brighton, they could nick the ball back, and that's where the penalty comes from. That's where the second goal comes from, where they exposed them on the counter. And they just didn't do that quite often enough, I didn't think. It was an all right performance. There was a couple of moments. I thought Mohamed Salah was good. Szoboszlai and Darwin Núñez did pretty well in moments and in flashes, but it just wasn't quite enough, really. And as I've just said to you before we started this, at least this week, it was Liverpool's own mistakes rather than a refereeing error that cost them. But I don't know. It's frustrating, and they're going to have to win every match, I think, between now and the Manchester City game just before the next international break for me to think that they are properly in contention for the title. Obviously, Arsenal and City are about to play, and we'll see how good they are in that one. But it just felt like a bit of... It's one of those games, I think, where if you are seriously going to challenge for the title, you've probably got to just put your foot down in that second half and run away with it. And Liverpool just didn't quite have enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a good point you make, because obviously at the moment it's quite hypothetical, but if one of City or Arsenal were to win today, it really will feel like a massively missed opportunity for Liverpool to get 3 points today, because they easily could have. They had that period of dominance in the second half where I think they really should have capitalised. But before we go into the performance, Matt, I actually want to start, because you mentioned there how it wasn't VAR or the referee's fault this week, but I want to actually start with the penalty Liverpool got, because there's been some calls, they went through it quickly in the Sky Sports studio, that Pascal Gross could have maybe been sent off as, we make no secret, you're our in-house referee here at the Echo. What did you make of it? Because there is a case for Szoboszlai it being a clear goal-scoring opportunity.
I think there is a case. I don't think we've ever seen one quite like that would have been a red card. I think it would have been incredibly harsh. I think it was a bit weird that he didn't get a yellow, because I think, pulling a shirt so blatantly is a yellow card anywhere else on the pitch, so why wouldn't it be in the penalty area? But for me, it wasn't a red card, or it would have been one that I'd be surprised if a referee gave it as a red or VAR intervened, just purely because Dominik Szoboszlai didn't have the ball at that point. The ball was kind of in front of him. He hadn't touched it yet at that point. He was going away from goal as well. Maybe not away, but certainly not directly towards. He was kind of going to the left of the goalkeeper, wasn't he, to sort of move away from that. So I just think it's one of those where, yeah, I'm sure, as we've seen on social media, the usual suspects have gone crazy for it, and clearly it's a conspiracy and all the rest of it. But I just think it's one of those where just because a referee last week made a mistake doesn't mean that this one was, necessarily a blatant one. So I've no major complaints with that. I think, Brighton in that moment maybe just sort of on the side of the officials, but I can see why it wasn't given as a red card. It wasn't one that, you sat at home screaming at your telly that should have been. It was just one of those that I think, because of what happened last week, maybe Liverpool fans taking the opportunity really to sort of see if they could have got one. But yeah, I can see why it wasn't given. By the letter of law, it could have been, but I would have been very surprised.
No, I agree with you. I teed the question at in the way that maybe led to thinking it was a penalty, but no, I think it would have been really harsh. I think a penalty was a fair result. I think he should have had a yellow card. Was baffled he didn't. I forget who made the other tackle as well on Diaz at the same foul, because Diaz got absolutely crunched. I forget who made the tackle, but yeah, could have been a couple of yellow cards for Brighton there. The first goal Liverpool conceded, Matt, it was really, really sloppy. We don't need to analyse it too much. Van Dijk should never have made that pass, and I don't think Addison can do much more, because he's obviously making the angle so he can receive the ball. But it was very sloppy throughout the day from Liverpool, wasn't it? It sort of set the tone. A lot of their passing and build-up from the back was sloppy in that nature, Matt, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it partly came from, it was probably a little bit of a tactic in terms of not playing into Brighton's hands. We know that they like to set traps, and you don't want to be too intense, because they can just play the ball around you and make you look silly. And I think Liverpool maybe overthought that a little bit. There were a couple of moments where they maybe could have pressed a little bit harder, and there was a bit of an opportunity, but they just didn't quite spot those moments well enough. And it was the same in possession as well. I think they almost had to be a little bit braver in terms of some of the things they were doing. The Van Dijk pass was a little bit undercooked. McAllister wasn't really aware of where he was, and they just needed to be a little bit sharper, I think, in certain moments. But they still did enough, I think, to have won the game. It was more the annoyance really for me was the free kick that they give away for the second goal that Brighton scored. Things like that, you just don't need to do that. And Trent didn't touch him, but I think it was Canate, wasn't it, that comes across and cleans him out. So it's one of those things, really. I think, yes, they could have been sharper, they could have been a little bit more intense, but equally they could have gotten away with it if they hadn't made a couple of silly tackles on the edge of the penalty area. And McAllister made one, I think, in the first half, wasn't it, where he cleans out somebody on the edge of the box. Just things like that you just don't need to do. I think that's the bigger thing for me, really, is that Liverpool maybe put themselves in a couple of positions where they end up getting punished, but they probably could have just avoided that fairly easily, I would have said.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think that's the main point to take away. I don't think anyone played particularly badly in terms of how they actually played, but there was just those stupid little decisions. There are so many seemingly innocuous and mistakes as fouls, but they can actually cost you points like they did today, and that can cost you in the long run in a title race. That's the standards of the Premier League now. These matches that you drop points in can have huge effects, the business end of the season, unfortunately, for Liverpool's sake. But Matt, I mean, the positives then, let's go through it, because I thought Dominic Szoboszlai played pretty well, but Mohamed Salah, he's Liverpool's man of the match today, showed why he is the best player at the club, didn't he?
Yeah, he was excellent, wasn't he? And it's another performance where you think he's just been unlucky to have been let down by one or two other performances, because we could quite easily be sat here talking about him being the man to snatch the victory when it looked like Liverpool were on a bit of a downward spiral in that first half. Somehow, gets onto the score sheet with a good goal, obviously puts away the penalty, plays a big part in a lot of different ways for Liverpool. And it was another performance, I think, that showed his creative side. I think, we might come on to Darwin Núñez in a second, but he was another one that I thought, really linked the play really nicely. Salah definitely did that. We're seeing a completely different side to him, I think, in the last couple of seasons. And, again, it's another performance where he comes away and he probably deserves a little bit more than what he's got. Szoboszlai was good as well. Obviously, could have had the assist for a penalty, but you don't get those, I don't think, in the Premier League. Could have had an assist when Ryan Gravenberch missed an open goal. So, again, there's good things, and maybe the narrative is a little bit different. Obviously, Gravenberch should have scored that, and that would have put the game to bed. But I think for Liverpool, there were a couple of moments. If you can start to sort out that defence. To be fair, I thought Trent did really well, actually, against Mitoma. There was some good performances defensively, but it's just those one or two errors that have ended up costing them. And I suppose the positive way of looking at it is if you cut those out, Liverpool have put in a decent performance, scored a couple of really good goals against a really good team as well. Let's not forget how good Brighton are. They've obviously had a couple of poor performances this season, but when they play like that, and they are maybe
they're
not
still sixth in the table and 4 points off top.
They're still a really, really good team, really well coached. So it's not a bad point in that context, but it's still really frustrating.
To be honest, I think Liverpool did play badly today, and there were some mistakes. I think that's what cost them, obviously. But you've got to remember, as you say, Matt, Brighton are currently sixth in the table. I think finished sixth last season in the Europa League. They're a very, very good side. I know they've lost key players, but in the grand scheme of things, it might not be a terrible point to drop. Liverpool now third place, I think, joint on 17 points with Arsenal. City, of course, playing Arsenal in about 5 minutes' time. But I mean, just to round off, Matt, I wanted to try and be as positive as I can, but there have been a lot of calls on social media complaining about Alexis McAllister, basically, in the number 6 role. I mean, how do you think he played today? Because he's come under a bit of stick, a bit of fire, hasn't he, today? Didn't have his best performance, but I mean, do you think he's the 6 Liverpool need long-term for this season?
No, it's just not his position, is it? I think it's unfair to judge him properly until Liverpool get somebody in who can play that role. I think if they'd have got what they tried to do in the summer and get somebody who's able to play in that position and be a real elite player, we've obviously not seen it from Moises Caicedo at Chelsea yet, but I think, in a team that is functioning, he could have been, a perfect option for Liverpool, really. That's why they put in the bid as high as what they did. If you've got him there and then you've got Szoboszlai, McAllister, Jones, Gravenberch, all of these players in front, I think it looks a completely different midfield. Again, obviously it's gone up a massive level since last season. He's levels above what Fabinho was last season, but he's maybe not quite the perfect option for some of these bigger games. I do think it probably says a lot that, Wataru Endo, we thought was taken off at half-time midweek with this game in mind, doesn't even get himself on the pitch. I've not been completely convinced on him so far. Again, it's still far too early to start sort of judging him, but it's tricky. Liverpool don't have an elite option ultimately in there. McAllister's playing out of position. I think everybody knows that it's not his perfect position. That's not where he wants to be. It's not where he would have been sold on the move to Liverpool in terms of him fitting into this team. So I just don't think it's the time to say that he's not performing as well as what he should be. For the majority of the games, he will be fine. But I think it is these big ones, Brighton away in particular, the sort of Manchester City and Arsenal's and those games. I wonder if Liverpool have to do something a little bit different with that. Maybe they tried to do that today. They did go 4-4-2 at times with Elliott on one side and Diaz on the other and kind of go with a 2. Again, didn't quite work. They got overrun at a couple of different moments. So it's tricky, really. That there's no doubt about it for me that McAllister is the best option in that position that Liverpool have got right now. But obviously, it's not the perfect solution. It's not a long-term one. And I'm sure, at some point they will look to go and get somebody in who is of the elite level. If there was somebody available that they could have got in the summer, they would have done that. So I'm sure, that won't change in January and in the future. And only then really is it fair to start to judge what he looks like as a player, because we know how good he can be. It just isn't his role. So, we wouldn't judge Mohamed Salah if he was having to play right back. So let's not judge McAllister.
Yeah, exactly that, Matt. Spot on. I think this criticism today is very harsh. And to be honest, look, it's not his position. I don't think he's ever played them before actually until this season. And he's done a pretty good job so far. So yeah, it's always going to be tricky for him going back to Brighton. As you touched on there, I think the way Brighton play and set up is actually very suited to playing against Liverpool, particularly. Liverpool just sort of choked out wide, and there's no space for them, nowhere they could exploit their quality out wide. So yeah, I think it's not the worst of points, but it feels like a missed opportunity. Although we'll have to see now with Man City and Arsenal kicking off whether it is a missed opportunity, as we've been going on about. But of course, it is now the international break. So we'll catch you again on the debrief, Blood Red viewers, probably in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, thank you for joining us on this one. We'll bring you Jurgen Klopp's press conference as soon as you have it right here on the Blood Red channel, as well as plenty of content going out on Liverpool.com and the Liverpool Echo site and socials. But yeah, for now, for me, Patrick Smith and Matt Addison, thank you for joining us. We'll catch you again soon on the debrief.